everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our podcast-like videos.
Yay!
If you haven't watched our first one on the Appalachian Trail, go check that one out. It's a really interesting discussion with Jeff about his time through hiking the Appalachian Trail 10 years ago. But today we thought we'd pick another interesting topic, and that is going to be desert, summits on the air, or SOTA. And SOTA is a topic that Jeff is very well versed in. He's made multiple talks on SOTA. He does contesting, and currently you have the mountain goat, which is the highest distinction that you can have in the Summits on the Air Association. So today we're going to talk about Desert SOTA. And do you have anything to say before we get started?
No, it should be a good talk.
Okay. So the first topic is about the terrain. So can you give a little bit of description of what the environment is like in the desert, such as, how accessible SOTA might be in the desert via car, also from a hiking perspective?
Yeah, so I've really only spent time in the Mojave Desert in Southern California, so I guess my answers will be based on my experience there. But, terrain-wise, the parts I've been to, it's, generally in the Antelope Valley, so it's a lot of big open plains and dry lake beds with buttes just sticking up in random places. And then, surrounding the Antelope Valley is a bunch of mountains, and the eastern end, it sort of just dissolves away into more hilly areas. So a lot of, just the buttes and rocks, open rocks. Mojave Desert's famous for the Joshua trees, so they're definitely pretty cool when you can hike around those. And I don't remember what else you were asking about a minute ago.
About the accessibility of the hikes? Do you need any
Oh,
special
yeah.
kind of four-wheel drive
Yeah, a lot of the
off-road?
hikes, a lot of the desert is BLM, so you can just go wherever you want. Um, you know, if there's no signs, I think you can just drive wherever you want. Some areas there are signs saying stay on marked roads, but usually the road networks are pretty dense because the OHV stuff is pretty popular down there. Um, in terms of hiking, some peaks are easy, you can approach them however you want, and some you gotta look carefully to find ways that aren't too steep, because there can be some cliffy areas down the desert.
I think you did one recently, which was pretty steep, um, down in Ridgecrest, right? Was it Fremont Peak?
Oh yeah, Fremont Peak is um, that one's pretty steep, but that one, it's steep, but it's sort of just slopes, and there weren't too many big jumbles of rocks or cliffs or anything. Um, sometimes you get there and it's too steep to hike up, or it's too cliffy, and you gotta find a way around. And sometimes it's just steep, and you just gotta, pick your way up and go slow.
Okay, on to the next set of questions, which will be the setup. So, when you get to the peak, is there anything different about setting up radio antenna that would be good to know if you're in a desert type of SOTA environment?
No, I mean, in terms of radio setup and stuff, it's very similar to everywhere else I've done it. Some summits there's a bunch of bushes you can stick a pole in. Others you gotta, find some rocks to make a little pile or to hold your um, the guy lines on your pole. Um, Normally the summits are wide open, so you can um, anywhere you sit, you'll have a good view, or you can, pick one side or the other if you want to view one way or find the most comfortable rock to sit on or whatever. But yeah, nothing difficult about playing radio down there.
What about spotting? Is it generally easy to get, internet connection and spot, or has that been difficult?
I mean, the lower buttes on the west side of the Antelope Valley are, a lot of them are fairly close to built up areas, so there's good cell service. Um, I think I, all the ones that spring to mind, I've had enough cell service to put out a spot, um, except for maybe when we went to Death Valley, but that's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, Death Valley was a challenge.
Though I think we did have enough because you were doing sideband and you got a spot out. We got a spot out for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
Not impossible.
Dante's View has cell service in Death Valley.
Mm-hmm. And what about some other supplies? It can get pretty dry in the desert, so, you know.
Almost by definition, it's going to be dry. um, yeah, the biggest thing I find, just gotta remember to drink enough water since you sweat and it just evaporates immediately. And so you think, oh, it's not that bad. I'm not all soaked in sweat. And you get up to the top and you just have all this salt crusty on your brow. And um, yeah, bring enough salty snacks and water. And definitely watch the temperature if you're there in the summer because it can get pretty toasty. Whenever I've been in the desert in the summer, I haven't tried doing any serious hiking, and then in those cases, I'll, drive up to the Sierra or drive into the San Gabriel Mountains or whatever, where it's higher and cooler and a bit more reasonable to do physical activity.
In terms of operating radios, have you noticed any, trouble getting contacts out in the desert? Or have you noticed any band activity that is more fruitful, I guess, than others?
I mean, like everywhere else, it depends on where everybody else is. HF is never a problem. There's always somebody on 20 meters or 40 meters you can work. Um, Most of the desert is, far enough away that you can get the people in the LA basin on like 40-meter NVIS. There are enough people that calling on VHF can get you a couple contacts. Um, I know during like microwave contests, people will drive around because there's good shots if you get a little elevation to the popular summits around. Um, but I've made contacts on I think all the bands I've tried when I've gone down there. So mostly 20, 30, 40, probably some 17, and then like 2 meters and 70 centimeters. If you're lucky, you could even get people over the hill into LA on VHF, but you'd probably need some propagation help to get over the tall mountains.
Yeah. I just remember a couple times when we were in the desert, we went to Joshua Tree National Park, Death Valley. I'm trying to remember if, because I'm only able to use 2 meters, well, voice,
Right.
and then sideband on 10 meters. So just thinking if I was able to make 4 contacts or not using, just a technician license.
I seem to recall you were able to get 4 on both of the summits we did.
Yeah.
Um,
So, I mean, if
I
you're
think we
looking,
lucked out and 10 meters was open when we were at Death Valley because that would have been hard on
yeah,
VHF since
yeah,
there's nobody nearby. But, when you're down near Victorville or Palmdale or whatever, there's enough hams around that VHF is a little easier.
definitely recommend checking out both those national parks, though. We caught a really nice sunset in Joshua Tree.
Yeah.
The colors are just amazing. They're like out of a painting. So,
Oh, yeah. Desert sunsets are worth it.
yeah. And if you can time your hikes, sodas just right,
Mm-hmm.
you can have a great
Yeah, I mean,
view.
some are definitely better than others, but sometimes you luck out and you get the really spectacular ones.
Hmm.
I was even down there once, and they had a rocket launch from Vandenberg, and it was right at sunset. So um, Vandenberg's on the coast, so we were looking west, and the rocket, shot up, and you could see the sun glinting off the rocket, and then the contrails were all lit up, and all the way up until it got into space, and you couldn't really see it anymore. But that was pretty cool.
The things you see out in the desert, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes random.
Yes.
Also, the snakes and things, scorpions and such that you see out there. Sometimes you have to be careful when you're walking around.
Yeah, I definitely, when I'm walking up piles of rocks, look before I put my hands down, um, just so I don't disturb any critters that don't want to be disturbed. But
Touch any spiky cactus.
that can be unavoidable sometimes. But I think you just want to avoid the choyas since those are particularly bad.
Yeah. Any last words or advice for people wanting to hike in the desert?
You know, go in the spring and the fall when it's nice out. It can get pretty chilly in the winter, but there's a week or two in the spring and a week or two in the fall when it's nice, and if you can catch that week, then it'll be, excellent hiking weather, excellent weather for playing radio, and you know, don't need a jacket, don't need to sweat too much.
That makes
There's
sense.
a certain beauty in the desert that's hard to describe, and it's fun to go visit.
Yeah, I agree. When we went down to the national parks, I could definitely see the beauty in the desert that I didn't realize, just by hearing about it. There's something special about the desert. I recommend that, even if you don't do SOTA, that you get to visit the desert in some capacity and just kind of admire that landscape and different.
It'd be even fun to go to like Arizona and see
Yeah,
the
even in
Saguaro Cactus
Arizona, all of
Desert
the
instead of the Joshua Tree
yeah,
Desert.
the wildlife and the botanical life.
Mm-hmm.
That's
It's all
yeah,
slightly different.
very interesting, and we learned about all the adaptations that these plants and
Mm-hmm.
have to the arid environment. And yeah, so thank you all for tuning in for this another podcast style episode.
Yay!
And we'll have more coming up with some topics that we find interesting. And, if there's anything that you find interesting that you'd like to hear from Jeff or even from me, as a beginner in ham radio, feel free to drop in the comments.
Leave a comment.
Leave comments. We get very happy when we see comments. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day or night, wherever you are, and we'll see you next time. Bye.